It's not just an issue of trash, it's also about how we overconsume. The first thing to do is to reduce waste.
We've cut our waste by 66%.
We have zero packaging, apart from bottles that are returnable.
Hello and thanks for joining us for France in Focus. This week we're turning our eye to the issue of wastage. At a time when world hunger is on the rise, a staggering 1/3 of all food produced globally ends up in the bin. And it's not just foodstuffs, lots of things that could be put to good use or be used more than once ends up in a landfill. A new law is being debated here in France, which aims to improve recycling techniques, cut down on plastics, cut down on food waste, and maybe even introduce a bottle deposit. Okay, so that's the legal side of things. Well, the sector that generates the most wastage is the construction industry, which accounts for about 70% of all waste produced here in France. Let's take a closer look now and see what's being done to tackle the issue.
Wood, tiles and sheets of fiberglass. These are just some of the construction materials that this organisation in Lyon is hoping to upcycle. Arthur is a regular who comes here almost every week.
2 years ago, I changed my consumer habits, like buying second-hand and buying local food in order to protect the environment. Obviously, coming to Minica is part of all that.
Every year, the construction industry in France throws away 250 million tonnes of waste. That's 3/4 of the country's total waste. But the industry has a space problem. There are only 400 official rubbish tips in France, and on top of that, companies have to pay to get their waste treated. The result? Hundreds of illegal rubbish dumps popping up across the country. Which is where Minica comes in. Launched in 2016 by an architect, the company gives construction materials a second life by selling them at a reduced price.
We get the materials directly from companies and professionals. At the end of construction, you can have a lot of leftover from mistakes made when ordering materials or having extra stock or planning mistakes. And on a building site, you also have deconstruction, the bits that they've ripped out from the building. That can be wooden floorboards, laminate flooring, tiles, and we also get a lot of leftover paint.
Since the beginning of the year, they've collected 30 tonnes of material. But to get there, they first had to get construction companies on board.
We tell them that it works out cheaper for them than throwing it away, and it improves their environmental record.
One of the companies that works with Minica is only a few kilometres away. Every month, they give Minica between 3 and 4 tonnes of wood. Not only does it save space, but money as well. Hundreds of euros that would otherwise be spent on treating the waste.
As a company that consumes energy and primary materials, it's always good to take a step back and think about how to avoid waste. It's good because it doesn't take any extra effort. We have the feeling of doing something good, and we save money.
Every tonne of reused wood saves 1.9 tonnes of CO2. On a national scale, the government's planned anti-waste law hopes to tackle the problem of waste by opening new rubbish tips and recycling centres for specific types of material.
Well, we're now at a sorting centre on the edge of Paris where bottles, cans and paper are all separated and then sent away for recycling. Well, to show us round, I'm joined now by Séverine Grastilleur, who is an engineer here at this plant. Okay, Séverine, so this is the end of the process of separating the garbage. What's the final destination for all these bottles here?
Here, plastic bottles are sent onto recycling centres that specialise in transforming plastic into small grains, to then be reused and remade into plastic bottles. Milk bottles, the white ones, are turned into fleece for textiles.
And it's not just plastic bottles, is it? There's cardboard, there are cans. What happens to all of that?
So the cardboard can be sent to paper mills, which turn into pulp. to then make new cardboard packaging. Cans made of steel and aluminium are melted down to make more steel and aluminium for scooters and cars, as well as corrugated iron roofs.
Okay, and how many people does this whole facility cater for?
At this sorting centre, we receive around 30,000 tonnes of waste to be recycled each year. That's the equivalent to the amount of garbage produced by about 900,000 people.
Séverine, what do you see as being the future of this whole process of separating garbage and recycling it?
The first thing to be done is to reduce the waste, reduce the amount of waste generated by using eco-friendly packaging and buying reusable products. Today, there's still a lot of recyclable items that end up in the regular trash. If we can get those, we can recycle them.
And finally, Séverine, I imagine some very strange objects make their way to this facility. What sort of things have you found?
Yes, there are sometimes sorting mistakes. We sometimes find odd things, like a kitchen sink, and electric scooters, or textiles and motorcycle helmets. It's not packaging, and we can't recycle that here.
Okay, Séverine Gracie, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. Well, the government has faced a certain amount of criticism for not doing enough to tackle the issues of waste management and recycling. And some citizens have decided to take matters into their own hands. And some are going even further still. They're aiming to create what's called a zero-waste environment. Well, let's take you now to see those efforts in action in the town of Roubaix in the north of France.
It's shopping day at the Delaportes. Before heading out to the stores, reusable bags and containers are collected to be used to carry items home. In the northern city of Roubaix, the town hall has certified about 50 businesses zero waste. It's part of a pilot program to help cut down on trash. The shopkeepers regularly fill customers' containers, which help reduce packaging waste. In the Doriez family, they've been weighing their trash since January 2019.
405 grams to be precise of non-recyclable waste.
So 405 grams divided by 6 people. Here's all the data since January. The major spikes are linked to dirty diapers. The curve really diminished when we switched to washable diapers.
Roubaix residents throw out 243 kilos of trash a year and another 50 kilos of recyclable goods. But families signed up for the Zero Waste Challenge have managed to cut their trash output in half over the course of a year.
We've stopped buying paper towels. Instead, we've made our own napkins out of cloth. The same with handkerchiefs.
One of the Delaporte's secret weapons, composting. They have hungry earthworms to feed. Thanks to the changes in their consumption habits, the Delaportes have managed to reduce their trash output by a quarter. Roubaix's town hall helps the Zero Waste Initiative by organizing classes to teach residents how to reduce and reuse. In this session, they're learning to better organize their refrigerators to cut down on food waste. For the Delaportes, the program has helped cultivate an interest in gardening. They use their compost as fertilizer, and they now grow vegetables like tomatoes, leeks, and zucchini, further reducing their need to buy such items, and perhaps planting the seeds for the next generation to reap.
Well, for more, we're joined now by Fleur Berlingen, who is the director of the Zero Waste France Association. Thank you for talking to us. As we've seen in that report, for example, a lot of initiatives are being taken by ordinary French citizens. Do you get the impression that the laws of this country are going in the same sort of direction?
In part. Currently, there's a bill in the works that aims to limit wasting resources and to limit the amount of trash. But for the moment, that bill is focused mostly on recycling. One of the objectives of President Macron and the current government is to reach 100% of recycled plastic. For us, this goal isn't enough, because plastic can't be recycled forever. And so 100% of recycled plastic, well, that's already a difficult goal to attain. It does nothing to address the disposable nature of plastic items, which is the real problem.
And how would you say that France is doing compared to, for example, its neighbours?
I'd say France is pretty much average in terms of the amount of waste it generates and the amount it sorts and recycles. That also means that some of our neighbouring countries are doing a better job, and they could become a source of inspiration. Look at Italy, for instance, where there's a high level of waste sorting, and more importantly, as regards to organic waste, which can be used for composting instead of just being chucked in the trash.
Some countries have extremely sophisticated means of reducing waste for disposing of rubbish, for separating rubbish, for reusing plastics, for example. What are you seeing overseas that we might try here in France?
There are some very interesting initiatives tackling the question of what to do with plastic items and disposable items. Let me give you the example of Berkeley, California, where the city has banned single-use plastic items in restaurants and cafes for sit-in customers. It's simple, really, but you have to decide to take that kind of action.
And finally, if someone who's watching would like to do something to address the situation and perhaps reduce wastage on a sort of personal level, what could they do? What's your message?
There's a lot that can be done on an individual level. To mention but two actions, the first is to avoid packaging. Buy whole foods, buy things at the market with your own containers instead of the supermarket. And second, sort organic matter to use in composting, for example. That will cut down waste by a third.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. Flore Berlingen, Director of the Zero Waste France Association. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for this week's edition of France in Focus. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon here on France 24.